Thanks for joining us for 5 on 5. I'm Joe Sullivan, pleased to be joined with Dan Ruby. Dan, thanks for stopping by today.
Thanks, Joe.
So Dan is running against Congressman Bentz. And first question, do you think Congressman Bentz has done enough since the Alameda fire with housing?
I don't, and that's part of the reason that I'm running. So a lot has happened in the past 5 years since I was last on 5 on 5. Last time I was the CEO of ScienceWorks Museum, and we were working on an exhibit on climate change. And how we experience that in Oregon is through our forests, and part of that is more extreme wildfires. So that became very real when we had the Alameda fire devastate Talent and Phoenix. We lost 2,500 homes. At that time, Representative Bentz was running for Congress and promised to do a bunch, and I haven't seen enough. So I moved into, after that happened, I moved into fire recovery work with a nonprofit called Firebrand Resiliency Collective, and then that turned into working with one of our local federally qualified health centers on transitional housing with Health and Human Services for fire survivors, and so that's how I got into housing.
Education is a big part of your platform. If elected to Congress, how would you help in this situation with education?
Yeah, so I'm a lifelong science educator. That's what I've done most of my life. Legislation is relatively new for me, but one of the things I've noticed in my work on school board is that we have two needs. We have a need for better education infrastructure, which is something that we can get help from the federal level, because we are having a hard time passing bonds for our aging school buildings across the district. But the other thing is that we need more opportunities for career and technical education in our district for workers for the industries that we need.
You moved to Oregon in 2018. For those not familiar with you, could you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so lifelong science educator, worked at the university in Northern Nevada for a long time and chose to move my family here, jumped at the opportunity, I love Oregon, to bring my family here to run the Science Museum in 2018. I've loved living here ever since, and on top of the housing thing, which is huge for me, the other thing, the work that I was doing with our community health center, was that we are near last in the nation for behavioral health. We have some of the worst mental health, and we have the worst for youth. It especially disproportionately affects vulnerable populations. So our seniors, people of color, people living on low income, and people that lost their homes in the fire. So we can do better. We need to do better, and so that's been a focus of mine is better mental health. That became very real for me a couple of years ago when a very close friend of mine lost their oldest son to an overdose, and so that's another point where just talking about something was not enough. Had to do something. So I ran for school board, was elected, and have been working on what it takes for kids to thrive. And the way to prevent that kind of thing is caring for them upstream before it becomes a problem. But you can't just care for kids, you also have to care for their families if you want to be effective. But you can't just care for families, you also have to care for the communities that they're in. So all of a sudden you're looking at what are all the things that it takes to build a thriving community. And that's what got me started thinking about running for office.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and be back with part 2 with Dan Ruby. Stay with us. Welcome back to part 2 of our 5 on 5 with Dan Ruby. And you mentioned Republicans, heavily Republican area. How do you expect to win as a Democrat?
It is an uphill battle, and that's never stopped me before. I do fundamentally believe that Republicans and Democrats both have visions for prosperous, safe communities across Oregon, but we have a difference of how we get there. And to me, it's a difference in how we spend our money. I know that the focus for Republicans tends to be far away from here. We're talking about things at the border. We're talking about aid to foreign countries. And what I'd like to do, given the choice of spending my money somewhere else or somewhere that will help Oregonians, is here at home. And so what I'd like to do is programs, my top priorities are education and health and housing, and I'd like to see programs that support Oregonians here at home in those areas.
All right, we've got about 30 seconds left. Is there anything else you want to touch upon?
Well, I'm super excited. I'm having a lot of fun meeting people around the district. I love Oregon, and people can learn more about me online. I'm pretty easy to look up, Dan Ruby. So I look forward to continuing this work beyond November and whatever hat I'm wearing.
All right, Dan, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you so much.
We'll have more local news after the break. Stay with us.